Welcome, Akari. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really honored to be here.
I know this is going to be an insightful and meaningful conversation. And when I learned about your background through someone else's podcast, someone we both know, Gloria, I thought I need to reach out to her. This is fascinating because it's the perfect intersection of what you cover. And I'm sure there's even more, but we're talking about heart math, heart, mind, soul, and then the overlapping information we get from human design. So, having said that, I always want to start with a little bit of your journey, how you arrived. Were you always in this space? So, without further ado, I will have you share with our audience.
Thank you. I didn't quite just arrive here. It was like everything. It's a journey. It's a journey of a lot of different bumps in the road that continue to move you around. For me, it was definitely getting myself into a place of I know I want to serve people and never really knowing how. So I started in banking. And I used to call myself the Robin Hood of the bank at the time. I don't know if it's safe to say the name, right? Especially these days. I would always help, especially small businesses. So I was a business banker, and I have always known that small business is the backbone of America. And so I had a lot of respect for the creativity that it involves to be an entrepreneur. And so I started in banking, and because it was business banking and finance, as you know, women are a minority in some of these industries, and I was the only woman at the table for a long time. So it's been a process of getting to know who I am and what I wanted. And at the end, as I was doing offshore banking for an English bank, the political and the economic spheres were not in congruency, and my office closed in Los Angeles, and it was an opportunity to pause. And when I paused, that's when my body started to crumble. I literally had to have surgery, carpal tunnel, I mean, all of these different things that I had no idea because I was too distracted. And through the distraction, like many of us, we don't tend to our self-care. We don't tend to our physical body. And it was through that journey of literally falling apart that I had to rise from my own ashes. And I realized I could do one of two things. I could go back to the grind as I knew it, and then go through the same process of falling apart, or I could start something a little different. And I started through breath work. And through breath work, my type A personality, as you may share with me, right? When we're in corporate America, we're constantly grinding and moving. I could not disconnect. So meditation for me was not easy. I tried transcendental meditation and it was so boring. I just couldn't. 20 minutes. Like, do you know what I could do in 20 minutes? So through breath work, I was finally able to disconnect from my body for the first time. And I loved it. And I thought, wow, if I would have only had this practice while I was doing my corporate work, it would have given me that separation I needed in order to reset my nervous system, get myself back together and ready for the next step. And so that's really where it started. My journey started with falling apart physically, emotionally, spiritually, and I'm sure it was not the first time that that had happened, but this was the catalyst where I finally got up and said, no more. I can't do this again.
And that wake up call allowed you to, I would say, become aware of who you really are, which is often the essence of what I hear human design does for you. It allows you to become aware of who you are.
I think it gives us permission to step into the greatness of who we are But because we live in a society that focuses on who we are not, that is where we focus our attention in. And because I worked in a very male centered industry, I was competing with the men, which means that I became one of the men. And I was leading in my masculinity, which also, God, duh, right? Like that's the reason why I had so many of my ailments was that I was not in my divine space. And so human design really has given me the permission to tap into the vulnerability and the strength of being a woman.
And one of the gifts that comes with um, understanding what it means to have that feminine energy, divine feminine energy. And I use that very consciously as opposed to saying woman, male woman, or man, woman. But the divine feminine energy is that there's a level of deep intuition associated with that. And I feel, and maybe you could speak to that, is having my own experience as a corporate American woman, and also with some of the probably the same challenges you might have been facing, is that I became disconnected from my heart. I became a warrior of some type
Mhm.
and very much locked in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. That disconnect is really where we lose that intuitive hit that we have as women. And I think to a certain degree, we gaslight ourselves to believe that. And we give up our power so easily. When we look at how powerful women are, it's no big surprise why the patriarchy tries to control us, trying to control how we show up in the world, trying to control our, you know, birthing opportunities. And I look at women, we women are portals. I mean, this is where life comes from. How much more powerful do you want to be? I mean, just being a woman alone. And so when we get disconnected from that, we are not able to guide and to lead our families because I believe that the man is the head and the woman is the neck. We tell the head where to go.
And
You're on
there's so many layers of spiritual meaning to this, nuanced, in the sense that while we are talking about pivots from corporate, while we're talking about men versus women, what we're really talking about are more subtle energy things.
for
And
sure.
right? And the
Mhm.
divine message of what we are here for. And this leads me to the next point that I'm really excited about because there's so many facets of what you bring to the table that I can't even, I could talk to you for 10 hours. I do probably really know. Well, before we hit record, we had a lengthy conversation. But one of the connections you've made, which you expressed early on, that you make these connections, the deeper, more intuitive, more expanded your growth becomes. So understanding that the real intelligence is in the heart
Mm,
and starts from the heart.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
that is accessible to both agnostic to how we have arrived in this human body, whether it's a male body or female body. That heart intelligence is universal.
It is. It creates resilience. And I think my favorite thing is it creates softness. It helps overcome that emotional chaos that we get inherited. Like we inherit this, as we said earlier, is like we inherit this dysregulated nervous system. And when we step into our power, then we can really learn how to respond to life versus react to life. And life every day is going to give us opportunities to practice every day. And it's up to us to recognize whether we're going to respond or we're going to react. And as we were talking earlier about your human design, you're an emotional manifesting generator. And what does that mean? It means that you are not here to make sudden decisions. You are the type that gets to sleep on it. And the one thing that I love is learning how to ask for that, right? When someone says, "All right, girl, we need you to tell us." And you can say, "You know what? I'm not really there yet." So you find your pause and you say, "Can you ask me in about an hour? Let me see if by the time the hour goes by, I'm clearer," because that's what it is. It's you finding your clarity of whether it's a heck yes or it's a heck no. And if it's not a heck yes, it's good to be curious about what, not maybe the why, but how can I get to that yes, and what is going to feel good and safe for me to say yes to. So purchasing a home, purchasing a car, big, big stuff. Finding that pause is probably the most difficult thing for a manifesting generator. That's the big challenge, but it's so rewarding for you.
So speaking to that, and because you and I went very deep into this topic of what do we inherit genetically, emotionally, what have we become in a lifetime where maybe, at least for myself, between the patriarchal or, upbringing in a very orthodox culture of maybe being a Hindu, if it's, parents that just migrated from India
Mm-hmm.
to then spending most of my, I would say, most of my life in a very competitive environment and then corporate environment, I became the person who felt like to have credibility, to be deemed worthy or intelligent, I had to give a response. I had to react constantly. So now, often as I'm getting wiser, hopefully a little bit, I find myself, my heart fluttering and anxious when somebody says, especially my dad or someone that I feel is authority, to do something or respond. And I'll be like, but can I just have time?
Mm-hmm.
And so what it becomes at a certain point in your life is you look back going, my gosh, I was so impulsive. Like, at least I consider my most of my 30s. Oh, she was so impulsive. Shilpa made some very wild choices. And some of the impulses were spot on because they were probably accurate, but it was too reactive.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, so that's where nervous system resiliency comes in. He, she who has the strongest nervous system wins. Period. And my example of this is the child at a restaurant who is, 3 and is crying. What does it do to you? Right? The moms are like, "Oh my gosh, I get this anxiety. Someone take care of the baby. Someone give it something. It needs soothing." And some will say, it's a baby, it's a toddler. That's exactly what they do. So let it go. Let it go. This is what happens. And that's a strong nervous system. But we don't have that kind of resiliency because there's a word in the nervous system world, and we call co-regulation, where a parent will lend you their nervous system and co-regulate with you. And that's typically what we do with our children when they're not feeling well. We come and we hold them and we try to make them safe. So that is where I see this toddler, and that's where my sadness goes, is that baby doesn't feel safe, needs some safety, and there's no one there to give him that. The parent is either not paying any attention because she's tired, whatever the situation is, there's no judgment, but this child is just asking for connection, for co-regulation. Mom, please lend me your strong nervous system because I can't regulate.
Yes. I apologize for the pause there. Um, this all ties to the meta topic that I have for this podcast, which now that I think about it, energy awareness, because at the end of the day, when we say nervous system, when we talk about regulating or um, just the whole ecosystem within which we live, mind, body, and soul, it's how to regulate that energy and how to become aware of what is going on. And it wasn't until recently, even though it's been years in the works for me, conscious years in the works, but now it's beginning to all click like, oh, that's the warrior in me coming out for these reasons. This is my heart palpitating because of this. Or even the physiological awareness, like, I need to regulate the blood sugar at this point because of the hormones. But it takes years for us to sometimes even get there. And some people may never have that awareness.
Oh God, for sure, for sure. Um, when you talk about hormones, it just reminded me. I just said something to someone around what happens to our crones, right? Our elders, they shrivel and become really tiny because no one ever told them that they were lacking hormones, right? Especially after that postmenopausal period, no one educates them. The Western world doesn't even know, and so we see our crones, literally the picture, right, of the crone is a shriveling little prune with all this wisdom. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, and it does. It's very sad, but I think that's why the way your work, my work, the work of so many other amazing women is to be here and to be the messengers of this energy and this awareness around, just because it's always been done that way, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't change. And that's that quantum field.
I so agree with you. I have this one cousin. I'm hoping he listens to this. When we were younger, he would often refer to the elders like, "Oh, they have a t temper." And then when I was at sort of the peak of my 30s and very passionate, getting things done in the world, and I would see him doing the same. If there was conflict, he'd say, "Oh, we're such and such. We have anger." And at that time, I had started to really challenge a lot of things because I didn't feel like it was right, but I didn't have the data to say why it doesn't feel right. And I would be like, No." I mean, maybe you're saying it because of DNA or habitual because it's family, but what if I choose a path and want to manifest my life in a different energetic level? No,
Well,
why live in that state of energy called anger? It's a vibration.
it is a vibration. Um, it is passed on. It is how certain beliefs, right? And his belief goes on to his lineage. And the only control that I have is of myself and what I'm going to give to my lineage. And so I can't respond for him. I can only respond to me, and I can challenge it. And not that doesn't mean I'm going to challenge and get into a fight with him. It just means that I'm going to challenge it. And at the end of the day, you get to see what everything looks like, right? So I grew up in a very conservative Catholic home, and like any religion, they're all very conservative, and they've got rules and the rules of engagement and what do you have to do. And I challenged all of that. I just didn't believe in any of that stuff. And it was really hard because I would get a lot of pressure from my mother. You need to get married. You need to have children. And it was crazy. I was in my early 20s. Why are you bothering me? You need to settle down. There's no way that I would turn around and look at my 23-year-old daughter and tell her, you need to settle down. Are you kidding me? Go fly, go investigate, go experience life. But in my family, it was settle down. So everyone around me started to settle down. And it just didn't feel right for me. But the pressure, gosh. And so I became the black sheep.
Well, you're talking to another black sheep. I think I'm quite there, or I have been there. I'm the first Indian woman in my family's side to have ever married outside of an Indian culture and get wait well past her mid-30s. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to wait or I don't want to. It was more like I want to do it on my own terms
Absolutely.
when it feels right. And yeah, I wanted to have a great education. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to travel and experience the world. And along the way, had I met somebody when I was younger that felt right, I probably would have married.
Yeah.
The goal was never to abide by this doctrine that's pushed top down. And the way I challenged it was, well, you show me evidence that you're happy.
Yes. Yes, because from where I'm standing, that just doesn't look like anywhere I want to be close to. And that was really the big thing. The judgment and the pressure. And it's kind of interesting because now everyone looks at me and my parenting style and they look at my daughter and everyone wants to know the secret of what I've done. My daughter just got back from a 2-week trip to South Africa. She was at Kruger National Park certifying for bioacoustics with the wild animals out there. And so and but that was always my curiosity. My curiosity is, okay, so how does a neuroscientist become a neuroscientist? How does someone have a child and it becomes a surgeon? And it all just means being there, giving them the support that they need to be whoever they want to be. And it's because of human design that I was able to afford my daughter that opportunity because her human design needs to be with animals, which is like mind blowing. She needs to be able to travel. She needs to be able to, just try a lot of different things. And the theme in on her chart is joy. And I thought, how many people have a theme of joy in their life? Please go find your joy. And as you're finding your joy, you're going to find where you belong.
Absolutely. And okay, so just to take a step back, because I did cover one time 2 years ago human design. But fast forward for those who are just tuning into my show or may not even heard this term, could you give the 1,000-foot view? And then maybe we can even use me as an example for somebody who's like, what's the connection between, because I've mentioned it, the heart resonance.
Mm-hmm.
What does it have to do with this thing called human design? And why is Shilpa saying that's connected to energy awareness?
Well, because human design is all energy, it is how we experience life through our energetic body. Human design is composed of 5 different systems. They're all ancient wisdom systems. So we have the chakra system, the Hindu chakra system, which you're very familiar with, the Eastern and Western astrology. We have the book of the tree of life, which is the Kabbalah, and then the I Ching, which is the book of wisdom for the Chinese. And to make it even more complicated and complex, we add quantum physics to it. And so we get little bits and pieces from these systems, and then we create, boom, this thing called human design. And human design is not a personality test. Human design tells us what our type is and what the strategy for life. So if anything that you can take from this is, what is my type? How am I here to experience and be in life? Am I here to be this big energy source? Am I here to initiate ideas? Am I here to lead, to guide? Or am I here to recalibrate my environment? And how am I going to do it? Am I going to do it by taking a pause and really feeling into myself to find clarity? Am I going to feel into my body and respond? Am I going to need to talk it out? I need a sounding board so that I can come up with the idea of what I have to do. How is it that I have to do these things? And so that alone gives you permission on so many levels to self-actualize, which is what this is all about.
And I like the word actualize because to some degree, I use the word realize, self-realize, self-actualize, is that this is not a one and done. It is connected to our soul, the evolution, energetically. This information allows us to more strategically live our life.
Absolutely. And I love it that you use the word evolve because that is really what it is. The chart has a lot of conundrums. And when we're talking about the Hindu chakra system, we call these centers, and they're centers on this body graph. These centers are either turned on or they're not. Okay. When they are turned on, they are fixed energy. And that is where a lot of evolution has to happen. This is where the growth happens because it's fixed energy. And sometimes that fixed energy can be very stubborn. So that is where work happens in that space. When it is not defined, when it is an open center, the funny thing is, well, it's not really funny, but I find it really entertaining, is like you have this emotional center. So you have emotional waves all day, every day that you're experiencing. Well, someone like me who doesn't have that defined, I don't. It's not consistent energy for me. So if I watch a scary movie, I am scared for days. If I watch a sad movie, I am sad for days because my automatic is I wake up salty or I wake up in a great mood. Like that is it. And for you, there's this beautiful manifestation of feelings and emotions and waves that go through you. And that is like your superpower, but it's also where evolution has to happen. That is where we recognize the need for nervous system work, right? So that you can actually sit with these feelings and find that clarity in order for you to move forward. For me, with an open center, I'm so empathetic and I'm feeling everyone's feelings, and I have a hard time with confrontations. So, my nervous system work is to be safe in my body, safe in my resiliency, so that I can move forward and have a confrontation if needed. Because at the end of the day, it's not personal. Things got to get done. And the nervous system, the brain will stop you from doing those things because of your own lived experiences. So, there's a lot of wisdom in how we operate. And that is how I connect that energy, right? That energy, that heart centered energy with the chart. Because when we look at the brain is so powerful, so ridiculously powerful. In my example of my personal life, it was so ridiculously powerful that it would not allow me to feel my body falling apart. It was like, yeah, there's no time for this. Like, we got stuff to do. We don't have time to care about this. So as soon as all of the external distractions were gone, boom, right? Like it just goes in. So the brain is so powerful. But what is the number one job of the brain? Do you know?
To protect you?
To keep you safe. Exactly. So when you're making choices and decisions that are coming out of the logical brain, are you making the best decision for yourself? Typically, it's to keep you safe. And so if it's to keep you safe, are you keeping yourself small? Are you keeping yourself in that same loop of, I can't get out of this. I'm so stuck and I keep trying, right? I keep trying to do things and it's not getting, well, it's doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So that is where the heart brain comes in. Because this heart brain, it's the conflict between the heart brain and the head brain. The heart brain is telling you, oh, yes, I really want to quit this miserable job that I just hate. And the mind brain's like, but what if you can't find another job? What if you're not good enough for a promotion? What if things are not going to work out the way you think? And then the trauma goggles go back on, and you're like, okay, I will stay. And so generator types in traditional human design are considered the slaves of the world. How sexy is that? We either quit too soon or we don't quit soon enough. And so when you start to practice heart centered techniques, heart-centered ways of being, you start making these very courageous decisions. And what's on the other side of that crazy decision, when you do it with courage, when you do it with intention, you may find yourself to be in a better place. And if not, you get to choose again. The point is to get you out of that stuck place, out making decisions. And it's a practice. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it right on the first try. That is why I encourage baby steps. Start asking yourself, do I want a blue dress or do I want a yellow dress? Tap into myself. Ooh, I really want that yellow dress. Give yourself permission to have the yellow dress. Start listening to what your heart wants and not what logically your brain is saying. Well, everyone's wearing blue. You should wear blue too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's the like it makes so much more sense now that I made this other connection. Like you were talking about playing it safe. So like maybe just a metaphor. But most of my life in my adult life was in corporate. So most of my wardrobe was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to fit in. Well, if you'd asked me before corporate days or now, what would you like to wear? I'm like bright, happy, fun colors. Well, for the moment back in corporate days, when I would start to wear things that made me bright and happy, I would be judged. I would be mocked. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't something enough.
Yeah.
That's what you meant by playing it small.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, when you first said that, I've been hearing it a lot, more and more, because I'm t in tune with it. But I've been hearing more and more the last 2 years, and I kept thinking, well, why would I, Shilpa, who wants to clearly be doing better stuff for myself, play it small? I don't know what they mean by small, but now I get it. It's because we are conditioned by our mind to react, not even respond, react to the conditions externally. So, desire not to be judged, well, then I'm not going to be wearing those bright colors to work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
a superficial example.
Well, but that's the pressure, right? I mean, think about this. I worked at top banks, and being one of the very few women, the top women needed to show them their worth through labels. And I'm not a label person because I believe, and I have always believed, that all of these name brands, they have a place out there. They don't need my money. I want to support the up and coming artists. I want to support the artisans. I want to support, and I want to wear, right? I want to wear the things that nobody else is wearing. And I don't want to be labeled. And so I get it, except I was very courageous. When, you had to wear your monkey suit, we also had to wear tights, right? Because the corporate world, God forbid you show your true legs. And so I would wear leggings that were striped, that had all kinds of geometric figures. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to force me to look like everybody else, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse, then I'm going to put my own flavor into it because it feels good. And it is within that space that I recognize that the patriarchy, the reaction for me for the patriarchy was not to conform, but to be a little rebellious. And the only way that I could be rebellious is through what I wore. And that was the only control that I really had. So it's really interesting how we each get conditioned to things. And for me, it just didn't feel good. And you're right. I am bright. I love color. And so to be limited to black and white was just like choke me.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, one of the revelations that comes by learning to know yourself better, and I would say trust who you are truly, is that,
I would say to be able to lean into that power because we give our power away,
yeah,
right?
that's the thing.
Then someone else has power over you and dictates. Uh, the beautiful thing about this is that you get the permission slips that you need in order for you to self actualize. and to show up in your authenticity.
And wouldn't of my career or path been so much different? I feel like while I was, I still agree. Like I loved at different points what I did. And truly believe, I would say with so much confidence, like I know I'm good and I know
Yeah,
I'm worthy. Um, but I wasn't always feeling appreciated in those different corporate roles. And I always felt like pigeonholed. I'd use the word, oh, I'm so pigeonholed because there's so much more to me. I didn't know how to express what that was, but I knew there was more. And there was no clear path. Like, like the mind would
yeah.
overtake saying, well, do you really want to be barefoot and pregnant? Because your parents will certainly hook you up.
You'll have a 5-day wedding and it'll be the best wedding for the decade, right?
Yeah.
Um, yes. So I think we lack the courage.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And a lot of it, again, we go back to that inheritance and to not being seen for who we uniquely are by our parents. And we also have to take a lot of accountability around not having the courage, because you can't get the courage from your parents. It's a choice that we consciously make. And I think that sometimes we just don't have the courage within us to make these bold statements and to say heck with it. Like, this is what I'm going to wear, this is what I'm going to do. And I think to a certain degree, because I was so rebellious, that's how I would show up. I was a single mom. I was a single mom. And so they would say, we're having an evening meeting at 4 o'clock. We're meeting here. And I would say, well, I don't have anyone to watch my daughter. God bless her. She was such a great little girl. And I would bring crayons and colors and books and all kinds of things for her to entertain herself. And I would say, I have an hour of your undivided attention. If you prioritize the things that really need to be said, that are the meat and bones of this meeting, great, because when that hour is over and that child says, I am done, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. She gave you an hour. I gave you an hour. I'm leaving. And so I created a lot of space to have, for me to respect my daughter, but more than anything else is to demand that everybody around me have respect for her as well.
Yeah.
And so, it was very bold. I look back and I'm thinking, man, I was really bold to put these boundaries down, especially in a corporate setting. But I also knew that I was really good at what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the duality. Like on one level, there is that inner guide and that is leading us. But now that additional layer of information that we can be given, whether it's through life wisdom, which I believe I have more of, um, where I'm more discerning, more understanding, less reactive, and then additional information like the human design. And then in addition to that, surrounding myself the last several years by like-minded souls that I didn't necessarily come across when I was in corporate, but like just one conversation, 1 hour with you before we hit record, and I was like, oh, she and I had 20 hours worth of conversation pieces that I really needed to go deep on, but we were completely aligned intuitively. So I guess the point is like at the end of the day, for those who are listening, like, because you mentioned this, maybe our gift is to now help another generation, whether it's women who need to understand and navigate how to understand their hormones or trust their heart. Um, for anyone that's listening that's younger, relatively speaking, I think you're at an advantage because there's information now.
There's a lot of information, but there's a lot of opportunities for us as women to become the mentors that we never had. There's not a lot of mentorship. There's not a lot of women that are accessible, because again, we live in this patriarchy mirror kind of space where uh, some people like to put themselves up in a pedestal and really dehumanize themselves. Whereas I'm from the philosophy that I bleed just like you do. I may just have had different experiences that have set me up, to do things differently, but it doesn't mean that I'm unapproachable or that we can't have a conversation like you and I have had, like where you're sharing and that I can say, okay, I can see this. Here's the shortcut. Here's what needs to get done. Here's how things can shift. And if you're curious enough to implement it, then how amazing, because it's a ripple effect. And that's what we're trying to create is a ripple effect, is knowing that something that you listen to me saying and that you put into practice, then all of a sudden reshapes your life. And I don't know how that's going to look, but I'm very curious about being that instigator and creating that ripple effect for you. I love that. I love being the catalyst of change for women.
Oh, yes. And you know, what you reminded me of, I've said this often in my podcast or those that have become close friends to me, that I created this space, whatever it's evolving to, because creating Omni Mindfulness was really an intuitive hit. Like, I have to do this. Why? What is it going to become? Where is it going? I don't know. But I knew one or two things for sure. One was I wanted to at least help be the channel, if not necessarily the voice, but the channel through which other women receive some level of mentorship that I didn't have.
Right. Right. And that is how we change the world, is by changing ourselves. I can't change everyone all around me. But here's a little side note. I went to go see Veda Austin. I don't know if you're familiar with her work.
Remind me again. I feel like I know the name.
Veda Austin has done a lot of different, she's a scientist, so she's done a lot of different things with water, a lot of experiments with water. So she was in LA yesterday, and so I snagged a ticket as soon as I saw it because I wanted to be in her presence. And what a lovely fairy energy of just love. And so, one of her messages that I think deserves to be spread on is we are all water. Water touches everything, water heals. When you give birth, your water breaks. So, when we start to work on ourselves, when we change the internal system of our own waters, we are able to help others strengthen their waters and start to change that.
That's so profound. And this kind of reminded me of it's somewhat of a metaphor, but water being energy and energy, like when you cry, you're releasing that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're probably familiar with this because we all talk about in this level, but when we lock the energy without expressing it or becoming aware of it, it
Yeah.
turns into dis-ease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Similar,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
for sure, for sure. And there's so many different things with water, and I've been fascinated with water forever. And even before I had the awareness of what it would do, I remember when we first moved into our home. I can't tell you where this came from. I decided to put a structured water unit in our home, which restructures the water. It takes away all of the memory of the water because water has memory. So it takes all the memory from the tap water away from it and it restructures it. And yesterday, listening to all of this, I'm thinking, gosh, just being so divinely guided into this space. When I coach women, we do what's called a water family constellation, and it operates in a little pool of water, and the energy shifts the little figurines on the pool, but it's all water. And so it's just beautiful to be able to go full circle with my work. And it starts with water and it ends with water, and in between there's just so much fluidity within that. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, and thinking about it in terms of being able to connect with that state of energy called water. perhaps maybe I'm making a leap here, but we're connecting to that vibration,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that it's a vibration of equanimity. Like when I think of my best meditations, I think of stillness. And
Yeah.
you see a body of water that's still, that feels like so much peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many different ways that that water expresses itself, and we can visually see, right? The storm. The calm before the storm.
And that also teaches us how to learn to respond. Again, another piece of lesson that's coming through wisdom. Like I struggle with a lot of things that I teach or talk about. I think it's because I'm curious on how can I improve those facets of my human experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes you human, though.
Yeah. Oh
That's what
shoot,
makes you
I'm
human.
human. Oh shoot, I'm
I
human.
know. Sorry.
I'm trying to break through the cycle here.
And that's a beautiful thing, though, because we are here to have a 3D experience, and that's what we're here for. And so it's a good reminder that we're here to have these experiences, and we're not going to be perfect. And sometimes we're going to show up messy, and that's okay. That's okay. Life gives you a lot of opportunity to continue to learn, and it's up to you. Are you going to react or are you going to respond?
Now, going back to one last thing before we wrap up, because I could, like I said, I could easily talk to you for another 10 hours, and you're gonna have to come back. I'm sorry to tell you, because we have to go deeper. But
Okay.
so human design, as you expressed it and explained it, I know that there'll be people, hopefully, that now have this curiosity that's piqued. Like, what is this, and how will it help me learn more about myself? Um, Another way to connect to that information is also through our heart. And I had mentioned this to you before, but maybe you can share or elaborate on heart math and the power of the heart.
Yeah. We were talking about how science is catching up to the woo, right? All of our ancestors throughout time have focused on the heart. And we always say, just hold on to your heart. And this is sometimes for many of us is what we're feeling. We're feeling deeply in our heart. And so the way I say it is when we are not nice to ourselves, we're literally giving our heart a pounding. And so, how about what would it be like to shift it around and reframe things to make my heart feel better? And it doesn't mean that I'm trying to change things. It's just, why does my heart always have to get a pounding? And so, reframing things helps me. If I feel sad or if I feel upset at myself for doing something silly, I remind myself I'm human. I'm allowed to make mistakes. My struggle is with perfectionism. My mother was always very big on doing things right. And so making mistakes feels very unsafe. So I have to remind myself it's okay. It's okay to not be perfect. Um, a big opportunity for that is when I see someone expressing themselves on social media and it doesn't always come out right. And people immediately start attacking. And I just ask for grace, because one of the hardest things for all of us to do is to be bold enough to express how we're feeling. And sometimes it doesn't, the intention is not to hurt or to offend, but sometimes that's how it comes out. And if we can take the energy away from that, right? Maybe that person has a channel on their human design that they think things, but it doesn't always get expressed the way they're thinking, or it's a half thought, half spoken thing. What if we can extend ourselves grace and just honor that person for using their voice? What would that be like? It would mean that so many more of us would actually show up and stop playing small because we're afraid of being judged. It would make it a safe place to know that I can think differently than you. And someone's going to have that kindness in their heart to offer me grace. So for me, tapping into the heart and the heart's intelligence means that through this, I can have the alignment with my brain because it's an 80-20 thing, right? 80% of what's happening, which is below the neck, all that information goes to the brain, but only 20% of that information goes back to the body. And poor brain, how many times have you opened your mouth and something weird comes out of it? The brain's really hard at work trying to figure out all of these. What is this organ feeling? What is this vagus nerve trying to do? What is the communication that's coming that I can't really decipher? But then the brain only gives 20% of that information back down. So there's no feedback, right? Tapping into the heart allows us to align with the brain. And when we align with the brain, we can make better choices, we can make better decisions, and we can actually be bold enough to do what we said we were going to do, follow through, maybe not procrastinate, maybe decide to show up different. There's so much that can happen when we're making aligned decisions.
And going back to that term you had used, showing up small, it's small because our mind, which can distort most of the time and is in fear mode, often is trying to protect us based on information that it has available, which is not always interpreted accurately. So
Correct.
then, hence we play small, but our heart, when it's nurtured, is expansive.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about one of my big challenges as a generator is that I'm here to respond to life. And so I get a lot of requests many times on, hey, can you go live and can you just talk? And it's like, I can't because I need something to respond to. Like if there's something to respond, then I'm like, oh my gosh. And this is why I love podcast interviews, is that I have the opportunity to share the wisdom that I have, but then tell me, go live and talk about something. Well, remember, I'm a generator. I need yes or no questions. If you're going to tell me talk about this, I'm not going to be able to. I need to be able to respond. Yeah, I'll do this. Like, hey, let's talk about nervous system. Let's do this. Let me talk to you about it. I know a lot about it, but at the moment when you put me on the spot, my mind goes, do I even know any of that? And so that's my struggle. It doesn't mean that it's right. It means that I have to tap into my own courage to be on the spot and allow myself to talk about whatever it is that needs to come out, channel it, let it out.
Yeah. So you're a manifesting generator or a
No, I'm a generator.
or generator. Okay. This is good. I now I'm about to go on another tangent, even though I thought I was going to wrap up, but this has got me so intrigued. Um, One of my quests is to really understand myself better as a manifesting generator, and you're a generator. And as soon as you talked about podcasting, and then you talked about going live, I've been requested and um, mentored by many friends that are successful in this space that just go live, just put yourself out there. And I'm like the same thing, like, well, what do I have to say? I don't know anything. And plus I think of myself, even though I've had people completely react to this next statement, I'm shy.
There's a lot of different pieces that come with that because you could be shy. You could be shy about going live, and that's totally okay. I've had to give myself permission and grace around if it doesn't feel good and my body is saying like heck no, then I honor what my body feels. But then there are times when I have to challenge myself, and I have. Like I've gone live a few times with other people. Um, I love putting videos of my work. I love being able to show when I am responding versus me coming in and not really have, I don't like having agendas. And that's the other thing, that I'm super spontaneous. And so sometimes that kind of worries me. Like, what am I, what's going to come up into my head and what am I going to dialogue about? So those are the things that I'm challenged with that I think isn't right or wrong, but it's definitely a place to be curious about. And I've been curious about it for a long time. And we'll see what I evolve into if I ever decide that that is my cup of tea.
So going sort of wrapping this up, when you say being curious about, sort of started with that in our conversation piece because we were talking about information,
Mm-hmm.
gives us self-actualization or awareness. When you are aware through information that's been interpreted about your human design or other things, when, let's say I know I'm a manifesting generator, does that mean that I'm locked into that? Is that something where I can't do anything about it, or it like you know what I'm trying to say is like
Totally.
yeah.
What a great question. That's a great question. When you have awareness, you can definitely experiment with other people's type. You're not locked into this. Locked into it would mean that you have no free will. And we all experience the chart, whether we're expressing energy or we're amplifying energy. But again, we have a choice of how we're supposed to do things, or not how we're supposed to, but how we want to show up. And that is the practice. The practice is understanding myself. And then to add a layer of complexity is understanding what's happening in the cosmos and how this is going to affect me. So you hear people going, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde. Blah, blah, blah. You're giving your power away, in my opinion. I choose to have free will because that's what is my sovereign birthright. I can fall into that space, but then I'm putting myself down as a victim. And I choose to show up as my sovereign person. If external things then show up with this Mercury retrograde, so be it. I'm not going to sit and just get stuck in that space. But I am aware that there are energies out there that will influence my behavior, that will influence, and when those things happen, I go into the transits because I'm very curious about what is happening that is causing all of this so that I can better ride that wave. Because if there's an emotional wave happening in the transits and I amplify that, that is not even mine, it's the collective, then it's me being curious about what it is that's out there that is causing all of this disruption within me.
Yeah. I liked what you said because one of my skepticisms and resistance towards things like human design in the past or astrological charts, which was heavily pushed on me when I was younger, which really came with that resistance when I was younger, like, oh, your charts say you need to get married, so you must do it now, kind of thing.
Right, right, right.
Right? Or this will happen, and it would be like this dire predicament prediction, right? Which I never bought into either. I'm not saying now that with my added layer of knowledge with human design, I I do give it credibility to some level, but at the end of the day, most spiritually speaking, I'm a soul, ever living, ever existing, manifesting soul. Then how can energy be disrupted? And I mean, I'm energy.
Yeah, and there's so many variables around that. Remember, I don't know if I shared this, but in order to manifest things, so many different things need to be in alignment. And so even though we can give a prediction of this, in order for that to happen, so many different things that are unknown to us need to be put in place. And then when all of these little ducks are in place, then all of a sudden, boom, something gets manifested and we get so excited. We don't know. And that's why I think each one of us needs to continue doing our work so that we, as we're doing our work, we are helping others manifest what is in their destiny. But if we're not doing our work, that is going to show up in a different way, maybe positive, maybe negative. I don't know. But when we do our work, more beautiful things start to happen. That's the ripple effect.
Yeah. And it's again, this is easily another 2 hour conversation, but it's about trusting the process. Like you and I talked about earlier before I hit record that building a business has been challenging. I think when, how, what will it take to get there? A lot of it's like intuitive hits, but the journey of doing the work and every day showing up is part of the process. It's like when I sit in meditation and that little evil thing on my shoulder that says, jump out and go do X or Y. And then the other part of me that says, sit, breathe, and focus on the mantra or whatever technique I'm practicing. That, just like every day showing up for what you're building, your dream, is the part of the journey. It's part of the lesson.
It is. It really is. It really, really is. And I think every cycle there's something to learn and something that helps you progress and grow and contribute back to the world because of that hyper independence that we sometimes have. We think that we can do it and build it alone. And the most beautiful lesson of all of this is knowing that it takes community. It takes community, it takes collaboration, it takes working with others in order for your work to actually shine. That is where the magic is.
And again, that goes back to energy though, because in the human design chart, I have that triple split, and I've been told that I need to connect regularly with others.
That's right. That's right. You do better when you're around all kinds of different people because then there's a connection. So, what that tells me is your centers are like little islands, and these little islands need a road. And so, the more you're around people, there's roads, there's bridges that are being completed, which then light up and then create all of the creativity and all of the different things that you need to get done. So, yeah, it's fantastic.
We'll have to go deeper into human design because there's like a billion other things that are so relevant. Like let's say you're a reflector versus a what, projector,
Projector.
and some you're and people that are listening to this who have no idea what human design is may not get this, but some people are not lit up at all, but they light
Yeah,
other people up.
but they light other people up. There's just so many different there's it's so multi-layered. It could get as complicated as going into the arrows that are on top of the chart, where your environment is, what your diet should look like, how you are best at manifesting, how you absorb energy, and how fast your brain works. And I am what we call a quad left. So all my variables are to the left. So very logical, very, there's a lot of energy there, not very receptive. I have to pay attention because I lose focus really quickly. It's so much information that unless you are really committed to doing the work and to understanding yourself and doing what it takes to be in the spaces that you need to be, it's too much information. I look at it as someone does a tarot card reading for you, or you go do an ayahuasca ceremony and so many different pieces of you open up. Well, you don't really know what you're really opening up. It could be multi life cycles that are, being shown to you without a framework. Same thing with the tarot card reading. It tells you a lot, but it doesn't really connect the dots for you. Human design is very similar. Human design can tell you the potentiality of human and of the human experience in your life, but you have to have, again, someone to lead you and guide you because we're here to learn from each other. It's not a self-taught kind of system. It's
No,
about collaboration.
it is about collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is beautiful. And the way you wrapped it up is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, and there's just one last point is there is a strong connection between that information, but not having it locked in the brain, which can distort, but then allowing it to drop into the heart and maybe strengthening the wisdom of the heart to lead your life.
Yeah, the heart doesn't lie. The heart has a 3 to 5 feet magnetic field. So if someone is behind me, it's not my brain that detects the person behind me, it's my heart. She who knows it all, she who can tell you what's going to happen before it even happens. Powerful.
Very powerful. And it's taken me almost most of my adult life to figure out, I've had some good heart decisions. I just didn't realize it was coming from the heart.
Yeah, that's where your courage comes from, girl. That's really when you go back, obviously we can connect the dots so much easier when we go backwards, but that's where you can see where you've used your heart versus your brain.
There's a famous Steve Jobs quote that I love, and I cite it often, and it talks about um, looking back. It's sometimes easier to connect the dots, but when it's happening, it feels like impulse. But then you realize there's that something deeper connected to heart wisdom or universe that was guiding you, and it wasn't just random.
Mhm. Yeah, there's another piece. There's a trilogy, which now has a fourth book. It's called Conversations with God.
Oh, who's the author for that?
Neil Marsh or something.
I read that when I was really young. I remember, yeah, that's beautiful.
And so consciousness is all around us, and we each experience it differently based on the vehicle, based on our human body that gets put into that consciousness. And so we are all one, expressing consciousness differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Makes so much more sense. See, this is why we can't just stop talking. We need to
I
have
know, we're
more.
done. I'm
We're,
done.
we're done. Okay, well, I sincerely mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm so grateful that the universe said, "Hey, check her out." It felt random because I was just clicking around, my friend's podcast, but like, oh, I think I need to listen to this.
Wow, that's amazing. I love synchronicities, and I love, like I said, I love being a catalyst in people's lives, and yeah, just changing their lives and being part of that process of changing the narrative. That's what I live for, and having it be a heart-centered space, it's my dream.
I love that dream, and I share that dream. The show notes will offer your details to for people to find you, your service, your gifts, and hopefully we can do a quick collaboration in the near future as well,
I
because
would love that.
I would really love that as well. And meet face to face. Apparently, we both live in California
Yes, of course, the best state. I mean, no,
in our minds, right?
I love living here. You can't beat our weather. And you're in San Diego, which, gosh, that's the best weather ever in California.
I love where I live. Although
Yes,
beach is gorgeous as well, but San Diego's gorgeous.
we live in a very beautiful state.
We do. Okay. Have a great evening, and we will connect very soon.
Thank you.
Take care.